Your lies and manipulation end tonight. Everyone needs to know what you did.
This is absurd. You're ruining everything.
The wine hit my shirt like a crimson declaration of war. Felix Rourke's hand had slipped at the exact moment I reached for the shrimp cocktail, sending a cascade of Bordeaux across my cheap polyester blend. The entire ballroom seemed to pause, crystal glasses suspended mid-toast, conversations fading as 200 pairs of eyes turned to witness my humiliation. "Oh my goodness, Orion." Nola rushed over with napkins, her voice dripping with theatrical concern. "Felix, you really should be more careful." Felix's smile never wavered. "Terribly sorry, old man. These things happen at parties, don't they?" He adjusted his $1,000 cufflinks while I stood there looking like I'd been shot in the chest. "Perhaps you should freshen up in the restroom." My wife pressed paper towels against my shirt with the enthusiasm of someone dealing with a mess on the side of the road. 23 years of marriage, and this was how she touched me now, as if I were something unpleasant that simply needed to be handled. "It's fine," I said, though we all knew it wasn't. The stain spread across my shirt like a map of my failures. Unemployed journalist at a party celebrating the success of my wife's boss. The boss she'd been texting until midnight. The boss whose cologne I'd been smelling on her blazers. The crowd gradually returned to their conversations, but I caught the sideways glances, the whispered comments behind manicured hands. Felix had orchestrated this perfectly. Public humiliation disguised as an accident, with my own wife playing the role of sympathetic caregiver. "I'll get you another shirt from the hotel gift shop," Nola offered, already backing away toward Felix's orbit. "Don't bother." I dabbed at the stain with deliberate calm. "Red's not really my color anyway." Felix laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Good sport about it, Orion. That's what I admire about you blue-collar types. You roll with the punches." Blue-collar. As if 20 years of investigative journalism counted for nothing because I'd grown up fixing cars with my dad. As if the Pulitzer nomination meant less than Felix's inherited advertising empire. I excused myself to the restroom, but instead of cleaning up, I pulled out my phone and texted Sasha. My old friend tended bar at Murphy's Boxing Club, and more importantly, he still remembered a few tricks from his hacking days. "Need a favor? You still have those color-changing compounds from your chemistry phase?" The reply came instantly. "The ones that activate with body heat? Yeah, why? Bring them to the Meridian Hotel. Service entrance, 10 minutes." I studied myself in the mirror. 42 years old, graying at the temples, wearing a shirt that screamed discount store. But my eyes were sharp and my hands were steady. Felix wanted to play games? I'd spent 2 decades exposing corruption and lies. This was just another investigation. The service entrance buzzed with catering staff rushing between the kitchen and ballroom. Sasha appeared like a ghost, sliding me a small vial of clear liquid. 2 drops in any drink, he whispered. Turns purple when it hits 98.6 degrees. Completely harmless, but it'll stain everything it touches. How long does it last? Hours, maybe days, depending on the fabric. His grin was wicked. What's the target? I nodded toward the ballroom where Felix held court near the bar, gesturing grandly with his wine glass. The man who thinks he owns everything. Back in the ballroom, I moved like smoke through the crowd. Years of working sources had taught me how to be invisible, how to listen without being noticed. I positioned myself near the bar where Felix was regaling his board members with some story about crushing a competitor. The key, Felix was saying, is knowing when someone's beaten. Some people just don't know when to quit. The irony was delicious. I waited until Felix set down his glass to embrace a late arrival, then moved in. 2 drops, clear as water, swirled into the expensive wine. I was back in the crowd before Felix returned to his drink. "Ladies and gentlemen," Felix called out, raising his glass. The room quieted. "A toast to success, to knowing your place in the world, and to the beautiful women who make it all worthwhile." His eyes found Nola across the room. She raised her glass with a smile that never quite reached her eyes anymore. Felix brought his wine to his lips and took a long, satisfied drink. Nothing happened immediately. He continued his toast, something about vision and leadership and the little people who supported great men. But as he spoke, as his body temperature warmed the wine, I watched the miracle unfold. It started as a faint purple tinge around his mouth. Then, as he gestured with increasing passion, droplets of wine flew from his glass. Where they landed on his pristine white shirt, vivid purple blooms appeared like flowers of shame. "Felix," someone whispered, "your shirt." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. He looked down just as the stain around his mouth darkened to royal purple. The wine in his glass had turned the color of grape soda, and every surface it had touched. His hands, his shirt, his lips glowed with embarrassing brightness. The ballroom erupted. Laughter rippled through the crowd as phones appeared, capturing Felix's transformation from distinguished CEO to purple-stained fool. He stood frozen, glass in hand, as the evidence of his humiliation spread across his clothing like a rash. "What the hell?" he started, but speaking only made it worse. Purple droplets sprayed from his mouth, decorating his shoes and the white tablecloth. Nola rushed to his aid, but I was already moving toward the DJ booth. The young man manning the equipment looked nervous as I approached, probably recognizing me as the wine-stained husband from earlier. "Excuse me," I said, sliding a USB drive across his console. "My wife asked me to give you this. She wants to show some footage to cheer up Mr. Rourke." The DJ nodded eagerly, probably hoping to salvage the evening's entertainment. Within moments, the ballroom screens flickered to life. But instead of whatever embarrassing footage of me Nola had prepared, the screens filled with a different kind of entertainment. Security camera footage from Felix's office, showing him screaming at his assistant until she cried. Audio recordings of him mocking his biggest clients. And the crown jewel, surveillance video from this very hotel, showing Felix and Nola in a passionate embrace in the coat check room just an hour ago. The crowd's laughter died as the implications sank in. Board members exchanged glances. Spouses looked at each other with raised eyebrows. And in the center of it all, Felix stood purple-mouthed and exposed, while my wife's face drained of all color. "Turn it off," Felix roared, purple spittle flying. "Turn it off right now." But the damage was done. Phones were recording, social media was buzzing, and Felix's carefully constructed image was crumbling like a sandcastle in a tsunami. I felt a hand on my arm. Nola had found me in the crowd, her eyes wide with panic. "Orion, what did you do?" I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman I'd married, the mother of my daughter, the person I'd trusted with every secret and fear. Now she was just another stranger wearing my wife's face. "I gave them what they wanted," I said quietly. "Entertainment." The aftermath was beautiful chaos. Felix's board members huddled in urgent conversation while their purple-stained leader tried desperately to regain control. The DJ, realizing his mistake, had cut the video feed, but the damage spread through the room like wildfire. Everyone was talking, texting, posting. "This is insane," Nola hissed, gripping my arm. "You've ruined everything." "Have I?" I watched Felix attempt to clean his mouth with a napkin, only succeeding in smearing more purple across his face. "Looks like I just revealed what was already there." My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter Mara. "Dad, someone posted a video of Mom at some party. People are sharing it at school. What's happening?" 20 years old. Home from college for the summer, and now she was getting dragged into this mess through social media. The protective father in me wanted to shield her, but the investigative journalist knew she deserved the truth. I typed back, "Your mother and I need to talk. Don't believe everything you see online, but don't ignore it either." "Orion." Felix appeared at my elbow, having abandoned his cleanup efforts. Purple still stained his teeth, making him look like he'd been eating grape popsicles. "We need to discuss this situation like civilized men." "Civilized?" I almost laughed. "You mean like spilling wine on someone's shirt in front of 200 people? His jaw tightened. "That was an accident. Just like your hand accidentally found its way to my wife's waist in that security footage." For a moment, his mask slipped completely. I saw the rage underneath, the entitlement that had convinced him he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," he said quietly. "I can destroy you. Your reputation, your career prospects, your family's future. One phone call." "My career's already destroyed, remember? Newspapers are extinct, according to you. And my family?" I glanced at Nola, who was frantically texting someone. "Well, that's been falling apart for months." Felix leaned closer, wine breath hot against my ear. "I'll make sure you never work again. Anywhere. In any capacity." "Funny thing about threats," I replied. "They only work if the person you're threatening has something left to lose." He straightened up, purple mouth twisting into something that might have been a smile. "Everyone has something to lose, Orion. Everyone." The menace in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it crystallized my resolve. This wasn't just about adultery anymore. This was about power. About men like Felix who believed the world owed them everything, while people like me deserved nothing. I excused myself and found a quiet corner to call my lawyer, Janet Morrison. She'd handled my divorce from my first marriage 15 years ago and had been warning me about Nola's recent behavior. Janet, it's Orion. I need you to start documenting everything. Financial records, text messages, emails. I think my wife is planning something. What kind of something? The kind that involves her boss, a lot of money, and me getting blamed for things I didn't do. There was a pause. How certain are you? Certain enough to start protecting myself. Can you freeze our joint accounts? Not without cause, but I can start building a paper trail. Orion, be careful. If she's planning what I think she's planning, you're in more danger than you know. The line went quiet, and I realized Janet was right. Nola wasn't just having an affair, she was positioning herself for something bigger. The question was what? I made my way back toward the ballroom, but stopped when I heard familiar voices from an alcove near the coat check. Nola and Felix speaking in urgent whispers. Completely out of control, Nola was saying. He's never done anything like this before. Your husband is more resourceful than we thought, Felix replied. But it doesn't change our timeline. If anything, it accelerates it. What if he suspects? Then we move faster. The harassment complaint gets filed Monday morning. Your testimony, plus the documentation we've prepared, should be enough to discredit him completely. My stomach dropped. Harassment complaint? What documentation? And Mara? Nola asked. We'll side with her mother when she hears what kind of man her father really is. Abusive, controlling, potentially dangerous? The court won't hesitate to grant you full custody. I pressed myself against the wall, hardly breathing. They were framing me. Not just for adultery, but for harassment, abuse, maybe worse. Everything made sense now. Nola's distance, her careful documentation of our arguments, her sudden interest in my computer passwords. The settlement should be substantial, Felix continued, especially with the emotional distress component. We're talking millions, Nola, enough to start over anywhere you want. What about your wife? Felix laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Margaret will be relieved. She's been looking for an excuse to leave me for years. This gives her the moral high ground she needs. Everyone wins. Except me. Except Mara. Except the truth. I backed away carefully, mind racing. They'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. Every fight, every cold shoulder, every late night at the office, it had all been building toward this moment. The party was supposed to be my final humiliation before they destroyed me completely. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated what a desperate man with investigative skills could accomplish. I found Sasha by the service entrance, smoking a cigarette and grinning at the chaos visible through the ballroom windows. How'd it go? He asked. Better than expected. But I need another favor, a bigger one. His expression grew serious. What kind of favor? The kind that might save my life. Sasha's apartment looked like an electronics graveyard had mated with a library. Computer monitors covered every surface. Cables snaked across the floor, and towers of hard drives hummed in the corners. This was where my old friend conducted his freelance IT consulting, which was code for helping people recover data they weren't supposed to have lost. Coffee? He offered, clearing newspapers off a chair that had seen better decades. Something stronger if you have it. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey that probably cost more than my car payment. Sasha might live like a hermit, but he had expensive tastes. Tell me everything, he said. I laid it out. The affair, the frame-up, the overheard conversation about harassment charges and custody battles. Sasha listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad covered in equations I couldn't begin to understand. They're playing the long game, he said finally. Smart, ruthless, but smart. The harassment angle is particularly nasty, hard to defend against, impossible to completely disprove. Can you help me? Depends. How dirty are we willing to get? I thought about Felix's threat, about Nola's betrayal, about my daughter's future being sacrificed for their greed. As dirty as necessary. Sasha smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Good, because nice guys finish last in wars like this. He led me to his main workstation, fingers flying across multiple keyboards simultaneously. First, we need to know everything they know. Bank records, email accounts, phone logs, social media activity. If they're building a case against you, we need to see their evidence. Is that legal? Is framing your husband for harassment legal? We're not stealing anything, just looking. What we do with what we find, that's where it gets interesting. The next 4 hours passed in a blur of screens and code. Sasha worked with the focused intensity of a surgeon, occasionally explaining what he was finding. Your wife's been busy, he said, pointing to a spreadsheet on one of his monitors. She's been documenting every argument you've had for the past 6 months. Times, dates, witnesses when available. She's even got recordings. Recordings? Audio files. Looks like she's been using her phone to record your fights. Smart. Makes you sound angry and controlling when you don't know you're being recorded. I listened to snippets of my own voice, raised in frustration during arguments I'd thought were private. Out of context, I sounded exactly like the kind of man who might harass his wife's coworkers. There's more, Sasha continued. Bank transfers, credit card records, hotel receipts. She and Felix have been meeting regularly for 8 months. But here's the interesting part, the money trail. He brought up another screen showing financial records. Felix has been paying for everything, hotels, dinners, even some of Nola's personal expenses, but it's all being run through shell companies, probably to hide it from his wife's divorce attorneys. Can we trace it? Already did. Want to guess who else has been receiving payments from these same shell companies? I had a sinking feeling. Who? Evelyn Marsh, your wife's best friend, the one who's been giving you those sympathetic looks at parties while telling you how worried she is about Nola working so late. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Evelyn had been feeding me information for months, playing the concerned friend while actually working for Felix. Every conversation, every confidence I'd shared had been reported back to my enemies. She's been your handler, Sasha explained, keeping tabs on your emotional state, your suspicions, your plans, classic intelligence operation. How long have you known? About an hour, but I wanted to be sure before I told you. There's more, Orion. The harassment complaint isn't their endgame, it's just the opening move. He pulled up a series of emails between Nola and a law firm I'd never heard of. They're planning to claim you've been emotionally abusive throughout your marriage. Controlling behavior, financial manipulation, isolation tactics, classic domestic abuse patterns. That's insane. Anyone who knows you, will be discredited as either enablers or victims themselves. They've thought this through, man. Character witnesses, expert testimony, even a psychologist who's prepared to testify about your pattern of escalating behavior. The scope of their conspiracy was breathtaking. They hadn't just planned to destroy my marriage, they'd architected the complete annihilation of my life. What about Mara? Sasha's expression darkened. They're planning to use her testimony about your controlling behavior toward Nola. Apparently, you've been isolating your wife from her friends and monitoring her activities. I asked her where she was going when she started staying out until midnight. Doesn't matter. They'll frame it as surveillance and control. Your daughter will testify that she witnessed you becoming increasingly paranoid and possessive. Mara would never. Mara doesn't know what they're planning to tell her about you. Kids believe their parents, Orion. If Nola convinces her that you're dangerous, that you've been abusing her mother... I felt the walls closing in. They'd thought of everything, covered every angle. In a few days, I'd be facing harassment charges, divorce proceedings, and a custody battle I couldn't win. My reputation would be destroyed, my relationship with my daughter poisoned, and my financial future obliterated. There has to be something, I said. Some way to fight back. Sasha leaned back in his chair, studying the screens full of evidence. There is, but it requires us to stop playing defense and start playing offense. What do you mean? I mean, we give them a war they're not prepared to fight. We take everything they've built against you and turn it inside out. But Orion... He looked at me seriously. Once we start down this path, there's no going back. You'll be burning bridges you can never rebuild. I thought about my marriage, already destroyed by lies and betrayal. I thought about my daughter, being manipulated into believing her father was a monster. I thought about Felix's smug face and Nola's calculated cruelty. Burn them all, I said. The next morning, I woke up in Sasha's guest room with a plan and a hangover. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Nola and 43 text messages ranging from concerned to furious. I ignored them all. Instead, I called in sick to my part-time job at the community college, teaching journalism to kids who still believed in truth and spent the day implementing what Sasha had dubbed Operation Scorched Earth. First stop, Janet Morrison's law office. She looked tired when I walked in, probably because I'd called her at 6 a.m. with a list of demands that would have made a paranoid dictator proud. I've prepared everything you requested, she said, sliding a folder across her desk. Restraining order paperwork, custody filings, financial asset protection documents. But Orion, are you sure about this approach? It's aggressive? They started this war, Janet. I'm just choosing the battlefield. She nodded grimly. The evidence you provided is certainly compelling. If even half of what's in these recordings and documents is accurate, your wife and her employer have committed several felonies. What kind of felonies? Conspiracy, fraud, potential blackmail. The shell company payments alone constitute tax evasion. And if they've been planning to file false harassment charges, she shrugged. That's perjury, filing false police reports, possibly criminal conspiracy. How long before we can move? I can file the restraining order this afternoon. The financial protections will take a day or two. But Orion, once we do this, there's no pretending your marriage can be saved. My marriage died months ago. I'm just finally burying the body. From Janet's office, I drove to Mara's apartment near the university. My daughter was waiting for me, confusion and concern written across her face. She looked so much like her mother had 20 years ago that it physically hurt. Dad, what's going on? Mom's been calling me all morning, crying about some kind of misunderstanding. I sat down across from her, choosing my words carefully. Mara, I need you to listen to something, but before you do, I want you to know that I love you more than anything in this world, and nothing that happens between your mother and me will ever change that. I played her selected portions of the recording Sasha had recovered. Nola and Felix discussing their frame-up plan, their casual dismissal of how it would affect Mara, their cold calculation of financial benefits. I watched my daughter's face change as the reality sank in. This can't be real, she whispered. Mom couldn't. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know this is hard to hear. But she told me you'd been acting strange, paranoid. She said you'd been following her, checking her phone. Because I suspected she was having an affair. I never imagined it was this elaborate. Mara was quiet for a long time, staring at the recorder as if it might suddenly reveal different truths. Finally, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. What happens now? Now we make sure the truth comes out before they can bury it. That afternoon, I met with Detective Ray Kowalski at the police station. Ray and I had worked together during my newspaper days. I'd helped him solve several cold cases by connecting dots he couldn't see, and he'd given me exclusive access to information that made my career. This is heavy stuff, Orion, he said after reviewing the evidence. If it's all legitimate, we're talking about a conspiracy that spans multiple jurisdictions. It's legitimate. My friend is good at what he does. Your friend sounds like he operates in some gray areas. Gray areas are where the truth usually hides. Ray leaned back in his chair, studying the documents. The harassment complaint hasn't been filed yet, right? According to our information, it's scheduled for Monday morning. Good. That gives us time to get ahead of it. I'll need to coordinate with the district attorney's office, maybe bring in some federal people if the financial crimes cross state lines. How long? A few days, maybe a week. Can you stay out of trouble that long? I thought about Nola's increasingly frantic calls, Felix's threats, and the ticking clock of their conspiracy. I'll do my best. That evening, I returned to the house I'd shared with Nola for 15 years. She was waiting for me in the kitchen, still in her work clothes, eyes red from crying or rage or both. Where have you been? She demanded. I've been calling you all day. Busy, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. Had some errands to run. Orion, we need to talk about what happened last night. I know you're upset, but... Upset? I almost laughed. Nola, I'm way past upset. She moved closer, and I caught a whiff of Felix's cologne on her clothes. Even now, even after being exposed, she couldn't stay away from him. It's not what you think, she said. Felix and I were just friends, business associates. That video was taken out of context. Which video? The one where you're kissing him, or the one where you're planning to destroy my life? Her face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. The harassment charges, the custody battle, the financial settlement. Very thorough plan, Nola. Very professional. For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw the cold calculation underneath. This was the woman who'd been sharing my bed while plotting my destruction. You don't understand the pressure I've been under, she said. The agency is cutthroat. I had to make choices. You chose to frame your husband for crimes he didn't commit. You chose to manipulate our daughter. You chose to destroy 23 years of marriage for money. It's not about money. Then what is it about? She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. It's about not being married to a failure anymore. The words hit like a slap. All pretense was gone now, all the lies stripped away. This was what she really thought of me, of us, of the life we'd built together. I see, I said quietly. Orion, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. And you know what? You're right. I am a failure. Failed journalist, failed husband, failed provider. But there's one thing I haven't failed at yet. What's that? I smiled, and it must have been a terrible expression because she took a step backward. Being your worst nightmare. The warehouse district looked like a graveyard for industrial dreams. Empty buildings stretched along the waterfront, their broken windows reflecting the gray morning sky like red eyes. I'd chosen the location carefully, isolated enough for privacy, public enough to avoid any accusations of improper conduct. Felix's Bentley looked obscenely out of place among the rust and decay. He'd brought Nola with him, probably as a witness or maybe just for moral support. They both looked nervous as they approached the abandoned loading dock where I waited. "Orion," Felix called out, his voice echoing off the empty buildings. "I'm glad you decided to be reasonable about this." "Reasonable?" I stepped out of the shadows, and they both flinched. "Is that what we're calling it?" Nola hung back while Felix approached with the swagger of a man accustomed to getting his way. Even here, even now, he couldn't abandon his performance of superiority. "Look, I know you're upset about the misunderstanding at the party," he said, "but there's no need for this to get out of hand. We're all adults here." "Adults don't frame innocent people for harassment." His smile flickered. "I'm not sure what you think you heard." "I heard everything, Felix. The timeline, the false evidence, the plan to destroy my relationship with my daughter. Very thorough, very professional, very stupid." Nola finally found her voice. "Orion, please. We can work this out. We don't have to destroy each other." "Destroy each other?" I laughed, and the sound bounced off the empty buildings like broken glass. "Nola, you already destroyed us. I'm just returning the favor." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. Detective Kowalski's number was already dialed, waiting for me to hit send. "One call," I said. "That's all it takes. Conspiracy, fraud, perjury, tax evasion. The federal prosecutor is very interested in your shell company arrangements, Felix. Apparently, hiding assets from divorce proceedings is frowned upon by the IRS." Felix's face went white. "You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" I pulled out a tablet and played the audio recording of their conversation from the hotel. Their voices filled the empty space, discussing harassment charges and financial settlements and custody manipulation. "That's illegal wiretapping," Nola protested. "Actually, it's not. I was present during the conversation, which makes it legal in this state. My lawyer was very thorough about that." Felix was sweating now, despite the cool morning air. "What do you want?" "Justice, truth, maybe just a little old-fashioned revenge." "Money?" he asked desperately. "I can make this worth your while. Whatever you want." "I want my life back. I want my daughter to know the truth about her mother. I want everyone who ever believed your lies to see exactly what kind of people you really are." I gestured toward the street where news vans were pulling up. "I called some old friends from the newspaper business. They're very interested in a story about corporate corruption and marital fraud. Seems like the kind of thing that might go viral." Felix spun around, seeing the reporters setting up their equipment. "You son of a—" "Careful," I warned. "Everything you say from now on is being recorded, for legal purposes." The reporters approached like sharks sensing an opportunity. I recognized most of them, colleagues from my newspaper days who remembered when I'd been one of the best investigative journalists in the city. "Orion," called Rebecca Martinez from Channel 7. "Can you tell us about the allegations against Felix Rourke and Meridian Advertising?" I looked at Felix and Nola, both of them trapped between the reporters and the water. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Their carefully constructed lies were about to be exposed to the harsh light of public scrutiny. "Mr. Rourke and my wife have been conducting an affair for 8 months," I said clearly. "During that time, they've been planning to frame me for workplace harassment in order to secure a favorable divorce settlement and custody arrangement." The reporters erupted with questions. Cameras focused on Felix's sweating face and Nola's tears. This was the moment I'd been building toward, complete and total exposure of their conspiracy. "The evidence includes financial records, audio recordings, and email communications," I continued, "all of which have been turned over to law enforcement and will be made available to the media." Felix tried to push past the reporters, but they surrounded him like a living wall. "No comment," he shouted. "This is harassment." "Is it true that you've been using shell companies to hide assets from your wife?" Rebecca pressed. "Is it true that you plan to file false harassment charges?" Another reporter called out. Felix's composure finally cracked completely. "This is insane. You people are vultures. I'm calling my lawyer." But his phone was already ringing. Probably his board of directors, his wife's attorneys, or the federal investigators who'd be wanting to discuss his creative accounting methods. Nola grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into my skin. "Please," she whispered. "Think about Mara. Think about our family." I looked at her, really looked at her, for what I knew would be the last time. The woman I'd loved, the mother of my child, the person who'd shared my bed while planning my destruction. "I am thinking about Mara," I said quietly. "I'm thinking about the kind of mother who'd sacrifice her daughter's relationship with her father for money. I'm thinking about the kind of woman who'd destroy 23 years of marriage without a second thought." Her hand fell away from my arm. I never meant for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You planned every detail, every lie, every betrayal. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught. Detective Kowalski appeared through the crowd of reporters, flanked by 2 federal agents in dark suits. Felix Rourke, Nola, you're both under arrest. The rest happened quickly. Miranda rights, handcuffs, the perp walk past cameras and microphones. Felix tried to maintain his dignity, but purple stains were still visible around his collar from the wine incident. Nola cried, but whether from shame or self-pity, I couldn't tell. As the police cars pulled away, Rebecca Martinez approached me with her camera crew. Any final thoughts, Orion? I looked out over the water, thinking about endings and beginnings, about justice and revenge, about the difference between the two. Sometimes the truth is ugly, I said finally. But it's still the truth, and sometimes that's all we have. The interview lasted another 10 minutes, but my part in the story was essentially over. The reporters would follow the legal proceedings, the financial investigations, the corporate scandal that would probably bring down Meridian Advertising. My job was finished. I walked back to my car, leaving behind the warehouse district and the wreckage of my old life. Tomorrow, I'd have to figure out how to rebuild. Tonight, I just wanted to go home and call my daughter. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Felix's Bentley in my rearview mirror. It sat abandoned in the parking lot, windows down, interior soaking in the morning drizzle. Expensive, ostentatious, and ultimately worthless, just like the man who'd driven it. The last toast had been served, and everyone had gotten exactly what they deserved.